I feel that maybe if I share a little of myself, that it may help someone who has been in a similar position. And I'll just give a little bit of background about myself. I was not born LDS. At the time that I was born, my family attended a fundamentalist Baptist church in Salina, Kansas. My mother and I moved to Utah when I was probably about 7 or 8 years old, after my parents got divorced. And we actually joined the LDS church at that time, I think more for practical reasons than other reasons. My mother remarried and we moved in and away from Utah and never had contact again with the LDS church until I was in high school in Washington. And at that point in time, my mother and I had talked to the missionaries, and long story short, we officially converted, even though we were already on the books, to the faith. At a very young age, I realized that I was different than my other male friends. And as I got older, I started to figure out what that difference was. It was very scary. And I remember going to church later in my high school years and hearing about how God would never give someone a burden that they couldn't overcome. I couldn't ever speak about it or allow myself to think about it in great detail because if I gave it thought, then that would mean it was real. But in my mind, I told myself that if I dedicated myself to God and to the church, that somehow this burden would be lifted from me, that this was some burden that was given to me as some special test. So I chose to go on a mission. In fact, I hounded my bishop after I turned 19 to get my papers submitted to go on a mission. And he was like, geez, leave me alone already. But I decided to serve a mission, and I was called to serve in Guatemala. And I was in the Guatemala City South Mission from 1988 to 1990, and I worked very hard. I tried to be very diligent in my own mind during that period of time in my life. I didn't give much thought to what made me different from everyone else. I was focused entirely on trying to share the gospel with the people of Guatemala. But always in the back of my mind, that was there. When I came home from my mission, the transition back to normal life was a little difficult. I realized that the burden that I had tried so hard to remove from myself was still there. And as time went on, that burden that I carried started to get bigger and bigger and bigger. When I was in my mid-20s, I dropped out of church attendance altogether and decided that I needed to just not think about that or myself. I just wanted to bury myself in something that would help me forget or ignore what was brewing inside of me. That all came to a head when I was about 28 years old. At the time, I had been working 2 jobs, mostly because I needed something to fill my space. I had backed away from my family. They didn't know what was going on with me, and they were a little worried about that, but I didn't want to talk about it, clearly. And it just came to a point one day where I was so conflicted and torn within myself that I couldn't function anymore. I couldn't eat. I couldn't sleep. I was losing weight. I was just sick, and I came to the point where I realized that I couldn't keep going on the same path that I had started on. And so I decided that I had two paths that I could choose. One was to just step off and be done with it. And the other one was to embrace it and see where it took me. I chose the latter. If I had chose the former, I would not be sitting here today to tell the story. My story is not unique, I come to find out. However, at the time that I was facing that, I thought that I was the only one. I thought that I was one of a very few people that were in that situation. What I can tell you in sharing my story is that the road has not been smooth. There have been quite a few bumps along the way. However, it was absolutely the right decision for me to make. There were complications and implications to that. I told my father, my father was the first person in my family that I told that I was gay. I thought that he was the one who would take it better than anyone else, and I was wrong about that. I told him in May of 1998 that I was gay. He sent me, he pretty much hung up on me on the phone when I told him, and sent me a letter a while later telling me that he didn't want to see me or talk to me or have any contact with me, and that if I were to visit my family in Kansas, he didn't want me to stop by. And I thought about that for a long time before I responded, and I told him that I wanted to have a relationship with him, that he knew something about me that made him uncomfortable, but that I was still the same person that I always was, and I was being completely authentic with him. He died 3 months later. The good part to this story is that when he was diagnosed with his cancer, I decided to go to Kansas anyway and see him. I think that looking death in the face kind of gives you a different perspective on what's important in life. And when I walked into his hospital room, I had no idea how he would react to me, what he would say, if he would tell me to leave. He didn't. And later that day, he and I had some time alone together. And he was dying of lung cancer, and he knew he was dying. And he told me, he said, "I never thought I would end up like this." And I said, "Well, life doesn't always turn out the way we planned, does it?" And he said, "No." And he apologized to me for the way that he acted. And he told me it was so silly. And he said that he loved me and that he was proud of me, and that me being gay just didn't matter. And I'm really glad that he said that, because I don't know if I could have, how I would have dealt with him passing away without having been able to make that reconciliation. My mother and my sister and the rest of my family have all been very loving, very accepting, and I've never had a moment's difficulty with them. My own life right now is very different than I imagined it would be when I was 21, but it's good. I've exceeded my own expectations of myself professionally. I'm authentic. I feel like I'm authentic. I'm not hiding anything from anyone. I have shortcomings, we all do. But at the end of the day, I know that I made the right choice of coming out and choosing the second path, and choosing to live and accept and experience. My relationship with the church has been basically non-existent until just recently. I've been able to start to reconnect with my Mormon background in a way that is not threatening to me. And I'm starting to realize that I can take the good, wonderful things that I learned there and embrace them for what they really are. And I'm grateful for that. I hope that something that I share today will help someone who's been in a similar position. But what I can say for certainty is that anyone who might be viewing this, I can tell you that, number one, you are not alone. You are not the only person that is going through this. Don't choose to step off the path. Keep going. Tomorrow's always a new day. And our lives will take us in different directions, but it's worth it to continue on. The life, there is life after coming out, and it's good, and it's honest, and I wouldn't have it any other way.